Hello everyone, I'm Asura, and today I'm going to be walking you through how to get your character sprinting and dashing in Unreal Engine 4 using C++. This tutorial is intended for people who have a very beginner understanding of Unreal Engine 4 or barely understand any understanding at all. Essentially, this is going to be for people who are just jumping into the system and trying to figure out how to get some things working in C++. Maybe you're even new to C++. Well, I just want to bring you through the basic steps for how to get your character moving faster than normal and how to give them a basic dash ability using C++. So you can see what that's going to look like here. Now I will say that these are all going to be using the base third-person character template models and animations. So you want to start this project by going into Unreal Engine and creating a third-person template game using the C++ setting, not the blueprint setting. You want to create a file using C++ because this is going to give you the basic third-person character. So the first thing you'll see here is that, yeah, we can run around like normal. This is something you'll be able to do as soon as you launch up the engine and launch up the project. But now you'll see if I hold down the shift button, my movement speed increases and he leans just a little bit forward. You can see a slight shift in his position and speed in his movements. And as well, we have a dash ability. We're moving forward at a decent speed and he's playing an animation there. I can't share this specific animation with you, but if you have your own animation, say from Mixamo or something else, you'll be able to use that for this tutorial. You'll still be able to use the dash either way. I just have to say first and foremost that I can't provide you with this animation. All right, so you're in the project, you're in here. You'll probably see a character right here in this kind of general area if you're just starting out. You're going to want to go ahead and delete him for right now if you're starting in from a brand new third-person template. We're going to kind of reassign him over to the player start here in a few moments. So the first thing you need to do when you load up your project, if we're going to be doing a sprint and a dash, is to go into your project settings. So you're going to go up here to File, and you're going to, Edit, and you're going to hit Project Settings, which will open this menu. Then you're going to want to scroll down to Input over here. And you'll see these things, action mappings and axis mappings. Today we're going to be dealing with action mappings. And action mappings are essentially when you push a key, it's going to assign an action to that, or you can assign an action to a pushed key. So go ahead and click the plus here, and we're going to create two actions. One of them is going to be called dash, and I'm going to assign it to E for this tutorial. You can assign it to whatever key you like. So you're going to hit dash, then click down this down menu and search for whatever input or key you'd like to assign it to and find it there. And then I'm going to create a sprint action, and this sprint action is going to be assigned to left shift for me, and again you can assign this to whatever you want. So once you have these inputs set up, then you're going to need to come back out here, and we're going to go to our C++ classes down here, click on tutorial or whatever you happen to name this project, right click on this character right here, and you want to create a blueprint class based on the tutorial character. Well, you might be asking, well, I thought this was a C++ tutorial, why are we creating a blueprint class? Well, typically when you're working with C++, especially with characters and things of that nature, you're going to want to have a blueprint child of the C++ class, because then you can go in and edit a lot of things much easier without needing to have the complex C++ kind of options and interfaces for these sorts of things. There's a lot of things that are going to be inherently C++, like look over here, these capsules that all say, or these components that all say inherited are C++. They're just inherited from the C++ class, and they're created in C++ and given to the blueprint. So you want to create that blueprint child there. Then what you need to do is you need to go to any file other than this C++ one right here. Go, for example, say here, blueprints. You're going to right click, you're going to create a blueprint class, and you're going to search for game mode base, or you can actually just click game mode base here. And then for the sake of this tutorial, name it tutorial if you want. Then you're just going to create that blueprint class. And this is just going to simply allow you to change the character that we're going to put in the game so you don't spawn the random third-person character blueprint that it already has assigned for you, and that we can use this new blueprint replication of the C++ class that we just created. So once you've done this, then you need to go back into the project settings one more time, and you're going to want to go up to maps and modes and change your default game mode right here, change default game mode to the game mode that you just created with the blueprint class, which in this case is tutorial. This will then allow these options to open up and allow you to change the default pawn class. You can then change the default pawn class to the tutorial character blueprint, or the character blueprint that you just created from the C++ class. And this will make it so that when you hit start, when you press start, over here in the play start area, it will spawn in the character from the C++ that we are working with. One more thing to note here is that when you create your blueprint copy of the C++ file right here, you're going to maybe be presented with this. You want to go into the viewport, and it's probably going to be empty for you. It's probably not going to have the character. It's probably not going to be facing the right direction. You'll see this arrow indicates which direction is pointing forward. So what you need to do in this case, if there's nothing here, is click on Mesh right up here, go over to Mesh, Skeletal Mesh, and select the mannequin here. You want to select the mannequin that you have. You'll see that I have a few, but that's just because I have some animations imported. You want to make sure you just have the base mannequin. There should be only one if you don't have anything else imported here. And then you want to go up into the animation area and make sure that the anim class is the third person anim blueprint, which is going to be the basic one assigned to the skeleton or mannequin at first. So your character might be out of place here. All you're going to want to do is drag him down, because he's usually kind of up here. When you spawn him in, drag him down to about the side, or about where the capsule is, and then rotate him using E, and then drag this blue thing here. You can just rotate him till he's facing directly forward with the arrow. All right, now we're actually going to start getting into the C++ of this tutorial. So what you're going to want to do now is go to your C++ classes, find your character, and double click him. This is going to open up your IDE, and it's going to show you the header file and the C++ file for the basic third-person character. Now, I think that if you're just starting out with Unreal, you should always use this basic template if you're trying to create a character and build from it. That's perfectly fine. It's a perfectly fine thing to do. If you were an advanced game dev and you needed to have some super complex movement system, then you could start out with a completely blank slate. But if you're a beginner, I highly recommend starting with the base character template for having a character be able to move. It's going to really speed things up and allow you to learn. You'll see that they have all these comments in these files that tell you and show you what these things are, what they do, and why they're there, essentially. I've gotten rid of a few of these things, but now we're going to go into what I've added here to get this character to be able to sprint, and it's actually really easy, so I hope you can follow along. So the first thing you want to do in your header file is go down to, I like to do this in the protected area, is go down to protected, and you're going to create a function called void sprint start. And you're also going to create a function called void sprint end. Then you're going to create two variables. One of them is going to be a float called run speed, and it's going to be 600.f. And the second is going to be another float called sprint speed that is 900.f. Now you might be asking why I chose these specific values here. 600 is the base movement speed that the third person character moves. So this is going to be what you move at right now if you haven't changed anything. So when we sprint, we want this to go up by a decent margin. So I usually like to do 900 here, and you'll see why. So I think if you set it to these two variables, you can have a nice starting place. But if you want to, you can of course change these values to be whatever you want them to be. I think that these are just good starting places. Now what you're going to want to do is implement these into the C++ file. Now, if you have an IDE that can do this, you can right-click, do quick actions and refactorings, and then create implementation, which will automatically move this function into the C++ file. But if you don't have that, then you can just move over to the C++ file and implement these yourself. Now, you'll notice there's all these kind of functions, and they can be intimidating for someone who's new. Ignore all these things and look for the function that you just implemented, or an empty space if you don't have the auto implementation function for your IDE. If that's the case, all you need to do is type in these things right here. Void a tutorial character. This green area is going to be the name of whatever your folder or file is called. So in this case, mine is tutorial character. So if yours isn't tutorial character, make sure that this A matches up with whatever, or after this A matches up with whatever you have up here, the double colons here, and then the name of the function. And then you'll create the brackets where you can put in the things that you're going to do, or what we're going to be doing is going to be inside of these two brackets here. So the first thing you need to do after you've implemented these functions, right now I've already got them set to do something, but first you need to make sure that when you push the button, it calls these functions. So if you push whatever button you set to be sprint, then it will do this. So to do this, you're going to go up to where it has the setup player input component function for this file. All this area does, all this does is tells the character what buttons do what when you start the game. So then you're going to want to make sure that you go into here, and these three haven't been included in your file yet, and this is what we're going to be added. So you want to type in player input component, which is going to say, okay, this is the player input component. Then we want to bind an action, the arrow, then bind an action So we're going to bind an action to the player input component, then the brackets here, and you're going to want to make sure that you include, it's very important that you include the parentheses right here. And then whatever you assigned the sprint function to be called. In my case, I named it sprint. So remember back in the project settings, we went to input and we named it something. In my case, it was sprint. Make sure it is letter for letter, capital for capital, whatever it is there in these parentheses. IE underscore pressed this ampersand a tutorial character, or again, whatever your file is named here, whatever your file is named here, 2 of these, and then sprint start, or whatever you happen to name this function. In this case, it was sprint start. Then you're going to want to copy this line, paste it down here, below it, right below it, change IE pressed to IE released, and then change sprint start to sprint end. And what this is going to do is this is going to say, okay, when we've pushed the bind action related to the thing that is named sprint, then we're going to call the function sprint start. When that button is released, then we're going to call the function sprint end. Now you want to go back down to your sprint start and sprint end functions. And this is really easy. So all we're going to do now is type in get character movement, which is a function that is attached to the inherent character class that you are building on top of. So this is something that's included in that template, again, that template that we're working with. Then you want to set the max walk speed. So what is the max speed that the get character movement can have? And you want to make that equal to our sprint speed. So all this is doing is saying that when you push the sprint button, tell the get character movement component that the highest speed that it can go is the sprint speed instead of the normal run speed. And then when you release the button down here at sprint end, when you call sprint end by releasing the button, we're going to do the exact same thing, get character movement, set max walk speed, and then set that to run speed. So when you push the button, it makes it so you move to the sprint speed, and then when you release the button, you go back down to the run speed. And what you can do now is go back into Unreal Engine, and you can go back to your game and make sure you compile. You have to compile this or it's not going to work. It may take some time, especially if you're doing it not on a solid state drive. It may take some time, but allow it to compile and then hit play. And then when you move around, you'll run like this. And when you press shift, you will sprint. Now, one more thing we need to do just for a little bit of a flavor, a little bit of spice here, is get him that little bit of lean moving forward. So what you want to do now is go into third person meshes. No, sorry, not third person meshes. You want to go into mannequin animations and open the third person idle run 2D, and this is your blend space. I'm not going to go over too much of this right now, but this is what's going to allow him to have that nice little lean forward when he's moving. Go up to the axis settings right here, drop this down, and you'll see the name speed here. Change the maximum axis value to 900, and this will make it so the maximum that this graph right here can move to is 900. Then you want to take the third person run and move it right here to 675. So this will show you how your character will move at different speeds, and what you want to make sure you're doing here is making it so that when you're at 600, which is your normal run speed when you're running, you're just a little bit before the third person run animation at its full. So if I hit play here, this is 600, this is where we are normally. Then if we hit sprint, we go all the way up here. But we want to make it so it's just a little bit behind. So right here at 675, we'll be at the full sprint. And this will make it so that when you press shift, it goes from almost running at full speed to way past it. And it won't like excel the animation. So this is what gives him that nice little lean forward when we hold down shift to sprint. Now let's get into dashing. So just like before, make sure you've gone into project settings, make sure you've set an input for the dash. I'm not going to go over that again. So after that, you want to open back up to the C++ file, and you want to go into the header file. At this point, you want to create a function, void, I'm going to call it dashing. Whenever I try to do dash, it gives me troubles for some reason, so I'm just going to do dashing in this case. And you want to implement it just like before, and you need to create a float dash distance called 6,000. Now, you might be saying 6,000 is a lot, but you'll see why, because when you're adding force in a very short amount of time, you need to have it be a lot of force, or else you won't go very far. I found that 6,000 is a nice starting point when it comes to dashing. So create the function dashing and create dash distance, equal it to 6,000. Then you want to go over to the tutorial character C++ and implement this function just like before. So if you don't have the implementation, automatically make sure that you get this in and then include the brackets. Now this is going to be a little bit more complicated than the sprinting. But before we will get into the dashing function itself, let's go back up and make sure that we've assigned the player input component to the dash function. So just like we did with sprint, we're going to assign player input component bind action. This time type in dash and make it so that when it's pressed, you call the dashing function. You should have an understanding of this from the sprint start and sprint end. The difference this time is that we don't need to set a released because we're not going to be setting it back to anything. Because instead of changing the character's movement speed, we're giving him a large amount of speed all at once. So it's not going to change his inherent speed. So therefore, we don't need to do a released to set it back to something. Unless you want him to have a continuous dash, which is something that we're not going to be doing right now. So once you have this input component set up, go back down to the dashing function. In this case, now we need to create a vector that says, okay, in which direction do we want the character to move? In which direction do we want the character to move? For the sake of simplicity, we're going to make the character move straight forward this time. So when we do dashing, create a constant f vector, we're creating a vector here, and name it forward direction. And this is just going to mean, this is going to be a new variable that we're creating named forward direction. And what is forward direction going to equal? Well, it equals our character, this. Then it's going to get the actor rotation, or whatever direction we're facing with the actor right now, as a function, dot vector. And make sure you include all this here. And what this essentially does is it just stores the forward direction of our character as a variable so that we can have it. So then whenever we call the dashing function, it'll know which way is forward. So then when we go down here, we're going to launch character, which is luckily a function already built into the character component. We don't have to build anything on top of it because it's something that they've already done for us. So we want to launch the character, then open up parentheses here, and you're going to want to have the forward direction. So we're going to take the forward direction. This is the direction that we want to launch our character, and multiply it. That's what this little thing does here. Multiply the forward direction by the dash distance. So, which is going to be the distance that we set over in the header file. So we're going to go in this direction at this speed, and we're going to be launched there. For now, just include true, true. I'm not going to go over these just at this moment. And what this is going to do is it's going to say that, okay, this is the direction forward, and this is what we want to do. We want to launch the character in the direction forward at the speed that we've set. So then you can actually go back into the game and compile, and you'll be able to dash. It won't have an animation linked to it. Make sure you compile, of course, just like last time. Hit play, and now once you've done this, when you push your dash button, you will dash forward. You won't have an animation just like this. I can show you quickly how to link an animation to this if you would like, but remember, I can't share this specific animation with you. So to attach an animation to the dashing function, you first need to go right back over to your header function, and you're going to want to go up to public in this case and create a U property edit anywhere, and then U anim montage with a little pointer star here, and name it, in this case, dash montage. And what this is going to do is it's going to tell the blueprint file that would set, it's going to tell it, hey, we want to assign a animation montage to this character. And this is going to be a lot easier, in my opinion, than assigning it physically or literally through C++, especially for a beginner. So this is going to be that halfway point between C++ and Blueprint. So go U property edit anywhere, create a U anim montage, and name it dash montage. And then you're going to want to go back over into the tutorial character C++ and say, if we have a dash montage, and what this means is if we've assigned a montage here, then play the montage. So play anim montage, dash montage, at the speed of 1, so at its normal speed, and then we're just going to say name none here. So if we've assigned a montage, then play the montage when we call the dash function. It's important to do this if check here, especially when you're working with C++, because if you don't have something and you try to call it, it can cause your system to crash. So it's important to get into these habits early, that whenever you're trying to call something that you're going to be assigning through something like blueprints, make sure that you're creating these safety nets to ensure that your system doesn't crash. So once you've done this, you can go right back into Unreal Engine, and you're going to need to create an animation montage. And I'm not going to go into too much detail on the specifics of animation montages, but essentially you're going to have to assign an animation to a montage. So what you'll want to do is find wherever you want to put the animations. In this case, I'm going to do it in Blueprints. Right-click, go to Animation, and create animation montage. It'll ask you whatever skeleton you want to have. Again, I have a ton because I'm using an animation pack that I've imported, but essentially you just want to make sure that you click the Unreal Engine 4 mannequin skeleton in this case. Name it something like Dash. You'll see I already have Dash there, but I'll just put Dashing in this case. Oh, Dash with an H at the end. Whatever, we'll leave it as that. It's not important. So once you get into the animation montage and you have it set up, then you're just going to want to go over to the asset browser, find whatever Dash you have, and pull it into this. And this will just make it so that when you push this, it'll do the animation that you've assigned to this montage. Then you can go ahead and save this. Now you'll notice that it says default group, default slot here. And this is because animation montages work on a different layer than your normal movement animation. So there's one final thing we have to do if we want to assign an animation to the dash, and that's that we need to go into the animation blueprint and allow this slot to override our basic movement animations. And I'll show you what that means in just a moment. But first we need to go to the animation blueprint, which I don't exactly remember where it is in this case. Let me find, yeah, I think it's in mannequin animation. Yeah, third person animation blueprint. So open this, and what you'll see here is you'll have default state machine and output pose, and you won't have default slot. And that's what you're going to want to add here. You're going to want to right click and add slot, default slot, and then just plug in the little character to source, and then plug in this other side into result, and that'll give you exactly what I have here. So what is this doing? What are we doing right here? This is allowing the dash animation to override the default movement that we have. Because if you went in and you clicked dash without including this, you would still do the move, but no animation would play, even if you've assigned the montage. And assigning the montage is actually the final thing that we have to do. I forgot to mention that. So after you've compiled and after you've included everything, go back over to the tutorial character blueprint. So the blueprint recreation of the C++ file, and go to the absolute top tier tutorial character blueprint self. And you'll see on the side here, we have an area for the dash montage. Now you can assign this montage that we've just created. See, dash in with the H here is here as well. And this will say that, okay, when we push the dash button, we're going to call the dash function, which if we've assigned something to it, then it will play this montage. And this will allow us to have the dash alongside the burst of speed as well. And this is what's going to give you that nice dash look when you push these buttons. So, okay, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. This is just an absolute beginner basic tutorial. I know I went a little slow here, but this is because when I started with C++ just a few months ago, there were a lot of tutorials with people who wouldn't take their time explaining concepts that were actually pretty simple and I think could have been explained a little bit better. And I wanted to give people a little bit easier time and maybe even slow things down, or at least explain things in better clarity when it comes to a lot of these things. So I hope you've learned something, and I hope this was helpful. Now your character should be able to sprint. He's going to have that nice little lean forward, and he's going to be able to dash if you push the button. If you liked this video and you would like to see more like it or some other kind of tutorials aimed at beginners in C++ and Unreal, please let me know down in the comment section below. This has been Asura once again. I hope you have a good one.